Welcome to 9rays.net. My name is Bryce Richard. In this particular video, what we're going to discuss, it's a continuation of the last video wherein we looked at the picture view application. We're going to dig in this video a little deeper to evaluate and explain the code behind this particular application. As you know, this particular application involves integrating not only Windows Forms controls, but Instrumentation Widgets controls offered by 9rays.net. These are very easy to program against, and this program kind of represents that. It's a wonderful example of representing that. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the tab entitled form1.vb, which is the code behind the design form offered in the last tab. I'm going to go through this fairly quickly because it's not very difficult to explain. In the first area of the code, and I'll go ahead and highlight it here, it's under the form load event, which means when the form initially loads, this code is activated. And what it does is this resizes the code. It references this particular part. I'm going back to the design view. It represents this area here, which is the text box. So what that does is it resizes the text box to the original size indicated here, 406 by 336 pixels. And then we have what we call the randomize function, which associates with the ability to use the random number generator, which I'll explain briefly here momentarily. The next section of the code, which I'll highlight, involves, there it is, it involves what happens during the click event method of the switch 1 form control. So what that is, the switch 1, going back to this, is this particular item here. As you can see, it's switch 1. The series of properties here look very much like the Windows form, and that code addresses what happens when the user clicks that button. So what happens is this is the random number generator. So if you're looking for some pretty interesting code, what this does is it takes a random number between, in this example, 1 and 5, and it incorporates it as an integer represented as a value, R value. And then I use an if-then statement to say if the text box equals nothing, then go ahead and fill it with this R value. Text box 1.text is represented here. So when I click it, it gives me the number that's associated here, and the value is transferred by way of an integer here, a variable rather, and then it's connected to the picture box. The next series of lines provides a select case statement transferring the variable of R value, which is a function of the random number generator, into different cases. In other words, if the random value of this particular formula results in a 1, between 1 and 5, then I'm programming against the code that says to make visible picture box 1, and then the rest of the picture boxes make them false, and add to the matrix text the rocks in the water, and then the slider value, which is represented by this 9rays.net control, is represented as 1 as well. So all it is code that matches what occurs when the random value represented by the random number generator reflects those numbers. The next part of code, which is this here, represents what happens in the click of the button. So by that I mean this random click button here. What happens when the user clicks that? This is the code that is activated. So it's a basic if-then statement that basically resizes the form to show whether or not we're going to see this text box. This toggle random clicks means that this area here will be toggled, as you saw in the first video. And then we have some very basic code that says, when you click the X, the application exits. That's this particular item here. And then finally, the last part of the code involves what happens when the slider value changes. So that suggests that when I neither click the toggle, the random clicks, or this control, but I just want to utilize this control by way of sliding it back and forth, this gives me the behavior associated with that value changed method. Now I want to go and show you this slider here, which is the slider value changed. You'll notice that there's several methods by which we can program against, just like a Windows form control. And this is actually a 9rays.net instrumentation widgets series of methods for that control. So, the look and feel is very similar in kind to the Windows forms control, which makes it a lot easier to program against. So it's consistent with what already exists in the Windows form controls. And so then again, this is a function, the dimx as integer equals the me slider 1 value. So we're taking that variable as a function of the select case value of x, and we're running against these different cases by way of adding the code to it. So what I'm saying is, if the integer value of the slider value is 1, then show these various one of the picture boxes, in this case picture box 1 for case 1, which makes sense, and then in the matrix text run the animated phrase rocks and water. If it's case 2, or if it's value 2 rather, run the snowy mountaintop, etc., all the way up to 5. And that basically concludes the code for the running of this application. All these wonderful pieces of code obviously are like puzzle fragments that are put together in a wonderful mosaic that allows the user to create an interesting application. And this could not have been done without the 9rays.net controls. So it's a wonderful offering, and if you're thinking about having a little bit more adding a little bit more style to your applications, this is a wonderful complement to that effort.